Norwegian Wood by Murakami, Part 3 continued. That winter, I found a part time job in a little record shop in Shinjuku. It didn't pay much, but the work was easy. Just watching the place 3 nights a week, and they let me buy records cheap. For Christmas, I bought Naoko a Henry Mancini album with a track of her favorite Dear Heart. I wrapped it myself and added a bright red ribbon. She gave me a pair of woolen gloves she had knitted. The thumbs were a little short, but they did keep my hands warm. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said, blushing. "What a bad job." "Don't worry, they fit fine," I said, holding my gloved hands out to her. "Well, at least you won't have to shove your hands in your pockets, I guess." Naoko didn't go home to Kobe for the winter break. I stayed in Tokyo too, working in the record shop right up to the end of the year. I didn't have anything especially fun to do in Kobe or anyone I wanted to see. The dorm's dining hall was closed for the holiday, so I went to Naoko's flat for meals. On New Year's Eve, we had rice cakes and soup like everybody else. A lot happened in late January and February that year, 1969. At the end of January, Stormtrooper went to bed with a raging fever, which meant I had to stand up Naoko that day. I had gone to a lot of trouble to get my hands on some free tickets for a concert. She had been especially eager to go because the orchestra was performing one of her favorites, Brahms' Fourth Symphony. But with Stormtrooper tossing around in bed on the verge of what looked like an agonizing death, I couldn't just leave him, and I couldn't find anyone stupid enough to nurse him in my place. I bought some ice and used several layers of plastic bags to hold it on his forehead, wiped his sweating brow with cold towels, took his temperature every hour, and even changed his vest for him. The fever stayed high for a day, but the following morning he jumped out of bed and started exercising as though nothing had happened. His temperature was completely normal. It was hard to believe he was a human being. "Weird," said Stormtrooper. "I've never run a fever in my life." It was almost as if he was blaming me. This made me mad. "But you did have a fever," I insisted, showing him the two wasted tickets. "Good thing they were free," he said. I wanted to grab his radio and throw it out of the window, but instead I went back to bed with a headache. It snowed several times in February. Near the end of the month, I got into a stupid fight with one of the third years on my floor and punched him. He hit his head against the concrete wall, but he wasn't badly injured, and Nagasawa straightened things out for me. Still, I was called into the dorm head's office and given a warning, after which I grew increasingly uncomfortable living in the dormitory. The academic year ended in March, but I came up a few credits short. My exam results were mediocre, mostly C's and D's with a few B's. Naoko had all the grades she needed to begin the spring term of her second year. We had completed one full cycle of the seasons. Halfway through April, Naoko turned 20. She was 7 months older than I was, my own birthday being in November. There was something strange about her becoming 20. I felt as if the only thing that made sense, whether for Naoko or for me, was to keep going back and forth between 18 and 19. After 18 would come 19, and after 19, 18, of course. But she turned 20, and in the autumn, I would do the same. Only the dead stay 17 forever. It rained on her birthday. After lectures, I bought a cake nearby and took the tram to her flat. "We ought to have a celebration," I said. I probably would have wanted the same thing if our positions had been reversed. It must be hard to pass your 20th birthday alone. The tram had been packed and had pitched so widely that by the time I arrived at Naoko's room, the cake was looking more like the Roman Colosseum than anything else. Still, once I had managed to stand up the 20 candles I had brought along, light them, close the curtains, and turn out the lights, we had the markings of a birthday party. Naoko opened a bottle of wine. We drank, had some cake, and enjoyed a simple dinner. I don't know. It's stupid being 20, she said. I'm just not ready. It feels weird, like somebody's pushing me from behind. I have got 7 months to get ready, I said with a laugh. You're so lucky. Still 19, said Naoko with a hint of envy. While we ate, I told her about Stormtrooper's new jumper. Until then, he had had only one, a navy blue pullover, so two was a big move for him. The jumper itself was a nice one, red and black with a knitted deer motif, but on him it made everybody laugh. He couldn't work out what was going on. What's so funny, Watanabe? He asked, sitting next to me in the dining hall. Is something stuck to my forehead? Nothing, I said, trying to keep a straight face. There's nothing funny. Nice jumper. Thanks, he said, beaming. Naoko loved the story. I have to meet him, she said. Just once. No way, I said. You'd laugh in his face. You think so? I'd bet on it. I see him every day and still I can't help laughing sometimes. We cleared the table and sat on the floor, listening to music and drinking the rest of the wine. She drank 2 glasses in the time it took me to finish one. Naoko was unusually talkative that night. She told me about her childhood, her school, her family. Each episode was a long one, executed with the painstaking detail of a miniature. I was amazed at the power of her memory, but as I sat listening, it began to dawn on me that there was something wrong with the way she was telling these stories. Something strange, warped even. Each tale had its own internal logic, but the link from one to the next was odd. Before you knew it, story A had turned into story B, which had been contained in A, and then came C from something in B, with no end in sight. I found things to say in response at first, but after a while I stopped trying. I put on a record, and when it ended, I lifted a needle and put on another. After the last record, I went back to the first. She only had six. The cycle started with SGT Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and ended with Bill Evans' Waltz for Debbie. Rain fell past the window. Time moved slowly. Naoko went on talking by herself. It eventually dawned on me what was wrong. Naoko was taking great care as she spoke not to touch on certain things. One of those things was Kizuki, of course, but there was more than Kizuki. And though she had certain subjects she was determined to avoid, she went on endlessly and in incredible detail about the most trivial, inane things. I had never heard her speak with such intensity before, and so I did not interrupt her. Once the clock struck 11, though I began to feel nervous. She had been talking non-stop for more than 4 hours. I had to worry about the last train and my midnight curfew. I saw my chance and cut in. Time for the troops to go home, I said, looking at my watch. Last train's coming. My words did not seem to reach her, or if they did, she was unable to grasp their meaning. She clamped her mouth shut for a split second, then went on with her story. I gave up and, shifting to a more comfortable position, drank what was left of the second bottle of wine. I thought I had better let her talk herself out. The curfew and the last train would have to take care of themselves. She did not go on for long, though. Before I knew it, she had stopped talking. The raised end of the last word she spoke seemed to float in the air where it had been torn off. She had not actually finished what she was saying. Her words had simply evaporated. She had been trying to go on, but had come up against nothing. Something was gone now, and I was probably the one who had destroyed it. My words might have finally reached her, taken the time to be understood, and obliterated whatever energy it was that had kept her talking so long. Lips slightly parted, she turned her half focused eyes on me. She looked like some kind of machine that had been humming along until someone pulled the plug. Her eyes appeared clouded, as if covered by some thin, translucent membrane. Sorry to interrupt, I said, but it's getting late, and one big tear spilled from her eye, ran down her cheeks, and splattered on a record jacket. Once the first tear broke free, the rest followed in an unbroken stream. Naoko bent forward on all fours on the floor and pressing her palms to the mat began to cry with the force of a person vomiting. Never in my life I had seen anyone cry with such intensity. Then I reached out and placed a hand on her trembling shoulder. Then, all but instinctively, I took her in my arms. Pressed against me, her whole body trembling, she continued to cry without a sound. My shirt became damp, then soaked with her tears and hot breath. Soon her fingers began to move across my back as if in search of something, some important thing that had always been there. Supporting her weight with my left arm, I used my right hand to caress her soft, straight hair, and I waited. In that position, I waited for Naoko to stop crying, and I went on waiting, but Naoko's cry never stopped. I slept with Naoko that night. Was it the right thing to do? I can't tell. Even now, almost 20 years later, I can't be sure. I suppose I'll never know. But at the time, it was all I could do. Okay, guys, here's a pause. Disclaimer here, 18 plus content is about to come. She was in a heightened state of tension and confusion, and she made it clear she wanted me to give her release. I turned the lights down and began one piece at a time with the gentlest touch I could manage to remove her clothes. Then I undressed. It was warm enough that rainy April night for us to cling to each other's nakedness without a sense of chill. We explored each other's body in the darkness without words. I kissed her and held her soft fists in my hands. She clutched at my erection. Her opening was warm and wet and asking for me. And yet, when I went inside her, Naoko tensed with pain. Was this her first time? I asked, and she nodded. Now it was my turn to be confused. I had assumed that Naoko had been sleeping with Kizuki all that time. I went in as far as I could and stayed there way for a long time, holding Naoko without moving. And then, as she began to seem calmer, I allowed myself to move inside her, taking a long time to come to climax with slow, gentle movements. Her arms tightened around me at the end when at last she broke her silence. Her cry was the saddest sound of orgasm I had ever heard. When everything had ended, I asked Naoko why she had never slept with Kizuki. This was a mistake. No sooner had I asked the question than she took her arms from me and started crying soundlessly again. I pulled her bedding from the closet, spread it on the mat floor, and put her in beneath the covers. Smoking, I watched the endless April rain beyond the window. The rain had stopped when morning came. Naoko was sleeping with her back to me, or maybe she hadn't slept at all. Whether she was awake or asleep, all words had left her lips, and her body now seemed stiff, almost frozen. I tried several times to talk to her, but she would not answer or move. I stared for a long time at her naked shoulder, but in the end I lost all hopes of eliciting a response and decided to give up. The floor was still littered with record jackets, glasses, wine bottles, and the ashtray I had been using. Half the caved in birthday cake remained on the table. It was as if time had come to a halt. I picked up the things off the floor and drank 2 glasses of water at the sink. On Naoko's desk lay a dictionary and a French verb chart. On the wall above the desk hung a calendar, one without an illustration or photo of any kind, just the numbers of the days of the month. There were no memos or marks written next to any of the dates. I picked up my clothes and dressed. The chest of my shirt was still damp and chilly. It had now coarse smell. On the notepad lying on the desk, I wrote, I'd like to have a good long talk with you once you have calmed down. Please call me soon. Happy birthday. I took one last look at Naoko's shoulder, stepped outside, and quietly shut the door. No call came even after a week had passed. Naoko's house had no system for calling people to the phone, and so on. Sunday morning, I took the train out to Kokobunji. She wasn't there, and her name had been removed from the door. The windows and storm shutters were closed tight. The manager told me that Naoko had moved out 3 days earlier. He had no idea where she had moved to. I went back to the dorm and wrote Naoko a long letter addressed to her home in Kobe. Wherever she was, they would forward it to her at least. I gave her an honest account of my feelings. There was a lot I still didn't understand, I said, and though I was trying hard to understand, it would take time. Where I would be once that time had gone by, it was impossible for me to say now, which is why it was impossible for me to make promises or demands or to set down pretty words. For one thing, we knew too little of each other. If, however, she would grant me the time, I would give it my best effort, and the two of us would come to know each other better. In any case, I want to see her again and have a good long talk. When I lost Kizuki, I lost the one person to whom I could speak honestly of my feelings, and I imagined it had been the same for Naoko. She and I had needed each other more than either of us knew, which was no doubt why our relationship had taken such a major detour and became, in a sense, robbed. I probably should not have done what I did, and yet I believe that it was all I could do. The warmth and closeness I felt for you at that moment was something I had never experienced before. I need you to answer this letter. Whatever that answer may be, I need to have it. No answer came. Something inside me had dropped away, and nothing came in to fill the empty cavern. There was an abnormal lightness to my body, and sounds had a hollow echo to them. I went to lectures more faithfully than ever. They were boring, and I never talked to my fellow students, but I had nothing else to do. I would sit by myself in the very front row of the lecture hall, speak to no one, and eat alone. I stopped smoking. The student strike started at the end of May. Dismantle the university, they all screamed. Go ahead, do it, I thought. Dismantle it, tear it apart, crush it to bits. I don't give a damn. It would be a breath of fresh air. I'm ready for anything. I'll help if necessary. Just go ahead and do it. With the campus blockaded and lectures suspended, I started to work at the delivery company, sitting with a driver, loading and unloading lorries, that kind of stuff. It was tougher than I thought. At first, I could hardly get out of bed in the morning with the pain. The pay was good though, and as long as I kept my body moving, I could forget about emptiness inside. I worked on the lorries 5 days a week, and 3 nights a week I continued my job at the record shop. Nights without work I spent with whiskey and books. Stormtrooper wouldn't touch whiskey and couldn't stand the smell, so when I was sprawled on my bed drinking it straight, he'd complain that the fumes made it impossible for him to study and asked me to take my bottle outside. You get the hell out, I growled. But you know, drinking in the dorm is against the rules. I don't give a shit. You get out. He stopped complaining, but now I was annoyed. I went to the roof and drank alone. In June, I wrote Naoko another long letter, addressing it again to her house in Kobe. It said pretty much the same thing as the first one, but at the end I added, waiting for your answer is one of the most painful things I have ever been through. At least let me know whether or not I hurt you. When I posted it, I felt as if the cavern inside me had grown again. That June, I went out with Nagasawa twice again to sleep with girls. It was easy both times. The first girl put up a terrific struggle when I tried to get her undressed and into the hotel bed, but when I began reading alone because it was just wasn't worth it, she came over and started nuzzling me. And after I had done it with the second one, she started asking me all kind of personal questions. How many girls had I slept with? Where was I from? Which university did I go to? What kind of music did I like? Had I ever read a novel by Osamu Dazai? Where would I like to go if I could travel abroad? Did I think her girls were too big? I made up some answers and went to sleep, but next morning she said she wanted to have breakfast with me, and she kept up the stream of questions over the tasteless eggs and toast and coffee. What kind of work did my father do? Did I get good marks at school? What month was I born in? Had I ever eaten frog? She was giving me a headache. So as soon as we had finished eating, I said I had to go to work. Will I ever see you again? She asked with a sad look. Oh, I'm sure we'll meet again somewhere before long, I said and left. What the hell I'm doing? I started wondering as soon I was alone, feeling disgusted with myself, and yet it was all I could do. My body was hungering for women. All the time I was sleeping with those girls, I thought about Naoko, the white shape of her naked body in the darkness, her sighs, the sound of the rain. The more I thought about these things, the hungrier my body grew. I went up to the roof with my whiskey and asked myself where I thought I was heading. Finally, at the beginning of July, a letter came from Naoko, a short letter. Please forgive me for not answering sooner, but try to understand. It took me a very long time before I was in any condition to write, and I have started this letter at least 10 times. Writing is a painful process for me. Let me begin with my conclusion. I have decided to take a year off from college. Officially, it's a leave for absence, but I suspect that I will never be going back. This will no doubt come as a surprise to you, but in fact, I had been thinking about doing this for a very long time. I tried a few times to mention it to you, but I was never able to make myself begin. I was afraid even to pronounce the words. Try not to get so worked up about things. Whatever happened or didn't happen, the end result would have been the same. This may not be the best way to put it, and I'm sorry if it hurts you. What I'm trying to tell you is, I don't want you to blame yourself for what happened with me. It is something I have to take on all by myself. I had been putting it off for more than a year, and so I ended up making things very difficult for you. There is probably no way to put it off any longer. After I moved out of my flat, I came back to my family's house in Kobe and was seeing a doctor for a while. He tells me there is a place in the hills outside Kyoto that would be perfect for me, and I'm thinking of spending a little time there. It's not exactly a hospital, more a sanatorium kind of thing, with a far freer style of treatment. I'll leave the details for another letter. What I need now is to rest my nerves in a quiet place cut off from the world. I feel grateful in my own way for the year of companionship you gave me. Please believe that much, even if you believe nothing else. You are not the one who hurt me. I, myself, am the one who did that. This is truly how I feel. For now, however, I am not prepared to see you. It's not that I don't want to see you. I'm simply not prepared for it. The moment I feel ready, I will write to you. Perhaps then we can get to know each other better. As you say, this is probably what we should do, get to know each other better. Goodbye. I read Naoko's letter again and again, and each time I would be filled with that same unbearable sadness I used to feel whenever Naoko herself stared into my eyes. I had no way to deal with it, no place I could take it to or hide it away. Like the wind passing over my body, it had neither shape nor weight, nor I could wrap myself in it. Objects in the scene would drift past me, but the words they spoke never reached my ears. I continued to spend my Saturday night sitting in the hall. There was no hope of a phone call, but I didn't know what else to do with the time. I would switch on a baseball game and pretend to watch it as I cut the empty space between me and the television set in two, then cut each half in two again over and over until I had fashioned a small space enough to hold in my hand. I would switch the set off at 10, go back to my room, and go to sleep. At the end of the month, Stormtrooper gave me a firefly. It was in an instant coffee jar, with air holes in the lid and containing some blades of grass and a little water. In the bright room, the firefly looked like some kind of ordinary black insect you'd find by a pond somewhere, but Stormtrooper insisted it was the real thing. I know a firefly when I see one, he said, and I had no reason or basis to disbelieve him. Fine, I said, it's a firefly. It had a sleepy look on his face, but it kept trying to climb up the slippery glass walls of the jar and falling back. I found it in the quad, he said. Here? By the dome? Yeah, you know the hotel down the street? They release fireflies in their garden for summer guests. This one made over here. Stormtrooper was busy stuffing clothes and notebooks into his black Boston bag as he spoke. We were several weeks into the summer holidays, and he and I were almost the only ones left in the dorm. I had carried on with my jobs rather than go back to Kobe, and he had stayed on for a practical training session. Now that the training had ended, he was going back to the mountains of Yamanashi. You could give this to your girlfriend, he said. I'm sure she'd love it. Thanks, I said. After dark, the dorm was hushed like a ruin. The flag had been lowered and the lights glowed in the window of the dining hall. With so few students left, they turned on only half the lights in the place, keeping the right half dark and left lighted. Still, the smell of dinner drifted up to me, some kind of cream stew. I took my bottled firefly to the roof. No one else was up there. A white vest hung on a clothesline that someone had forgotten to take in, waving in the evening breeze like the discarded shell of some huge insect. I climbed a steel ladder in the corner of the roof to the top of the dormitory's water tank. The tank was still warm with the heat of the sunlight it had absorbed during the day. I sat in the narrow space above the tank, leaning against the handrail and coming face to face with an almost full white moon. The lights of Shinjuku glowed to the right, Ikebukuro to the left. Car headlights flowed in the brilliant stream from one pool of light to the other. A dull roar of jumbled sounds hung over the city like a cloud. The firefly made a faint glow in the bottom of the jar, its light all too weak, its color all too pale. I hadn't seen a firefly in years, but the ones in my memory sent a far more intense light into the summer darkness, and that brilliant burning image was the one that had stayed with me all the time. Maybe this firefly was on the verge of death. I gave the jar a few shakes. The firefly bumped against the glass walls and tried to fly, but its light remained dim. I tried to remember when I had last seen fireflies and where it might have been. I could see the scene in my mind, but was unable to recall the time or place. I could hear the sound of water in the darkness and see an old fashioned brick sluice gate. It had a handle you could turn to open and close that gate. The stream it controlled was small enough to be hidden by the grass on its bank. The night was dark, so dark I couldn't see my feet when I turned out my torch. Hundreds of fireflies drifted over the pool of water, held back by the sluice gate, their hot glow reflected in the water like a shower of sparks. I closed my eyes and steeped myself in that long ago darkness. I heard the wind with unusual clarity. A light breeze swept past me, leaving strangely brilliant trails in the dark. I opened my eyes to find the darkness of the summer night a few degrees deeper than it had been. I twisted open the lid of the jar and took out the firefly, setting it on the 2-inch lip of the water tank. It seemed not to grasp its new surroundings. It hobbled around the head of the steel bolt, catching its legs on curling scabs of paint. It moved to the right until it found its way blocked, and then circled back to the left. Finally, with some effort, it mounted the head of the bolt and crouched there for a while, unmoving as if it had taken its last breath. Still leaning Against the handrail, I studied the firefly. Neither I nor it made a move for a very long time. The wind continued sweeping past the two of us, while the numberless leaves of the Zelkova tree rustled in the darkness. I waited forever. Only much later did the firefly take to the air, as if some thought had suddenly occurred to it. The firefly spread its wings, and in the moment it had flown past the handrail to float in the pale darkness. It raised a swift arc by the side of the water tank as though trying to bring back a lost interval in time. And then, after hovering there for a few seconds, as if to watch its curved line of light blend into the wind, it finally flew off to the east. Long after the firefly had disappeared, the trail of its light remained inside me, its pale, faint glow hovering on and on in the thick darkness behind my eyelids like a lost soul. More than once I tried stretching my hand out in the dark. My fingers touched nothing. The faint glow remained just beyond my grasp.